When people hear the word trauma, they think of something big, a sudden crisis, a life-altering moment. They don't think about unpaid bills or choosing between groceries and rent. They don't think about growing up watching parents argue over money. They don't think about long-term scarcity. But trauma isn't just about what happened. It's about how your nervous system responded and adapted to what happened. Financial trauma is what happens when money becomes a repeated source of fear, shame, or helplessness. When your body links finances with threat. When survival mode gets triggered, not once, but constantly. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle, chronic, invisible. But the effects stay. You learn to avoid your bank balance because looking at it used to bring panic. You overspend in moments of stress because, as a kid, treats were the only comfort. You undercharge because deep down, you still feel guilty for wanting more. The problem is, we don't name these things as trauma. We call them bad habits, self-sabotage, or just how I am with money. We shame ourselves for the symptoms without recognizing the cause. But financial trauma isn't a character flaw. It's a nervous system adaptation. It's your brain learning how to protect you from what once felt unsafe. And like any form of trauma, it doesn't go away just because time passes or income rises. You can make 6 figures and still flinch when your card declines. You can be debt-free and still feel like money will run out tomorrow. You can have savings and still not feel secure. Because trauma isn't about logic. It's about pattern recognition. Your body remembers what your brain tries to move past. Understanding this is the first step. Not to dwell in it, but to stop thinking your money problems are just about discipline or math. They might be about protection. They might be about history. And the moment you stop blaming yourself, you start seeing what actually needs healing. You tell yourself you'll check your account tomorrow. You say you'll finally sit down and figure out your budget this weekend. You ignore the email from your bank. You put off that money conversation. Again. And on the surface, it looks like procrastination, or avoidance, or laziness. But what if it's none of those? What if your brain learned, somewhere along the way, that looking at money is dangerous? That it brings up shame, fear, panic, or helplessness? Because if your early experiences with money involved stress, instability, or chaos, then financial information feels like a threat, even when it's just numbers. So your body does what it was trained to do. It protects you by making it feel safer to not know, to delay, to avoid. And that avoidance becomes its own kind of safety, a familiar, manageable discomfort, better than the raw panic of looking. This is why people who are highly functional in every other part of life can totally shut down around money. It's not logic, it's nervous system memory, and the more you avoid, the more guilt builds. The more guilt builds, the harder it is to face, and eventually, the number in your bank account becomes not just data, but proof in your mind that something's wrong with you, so you delay again. And the loop continues. Avoidance is not a lack of responsibility. It's a learned response to past overwhelm. The goal isn't to push through it or just be more disciplined. It's to make the act of looking feel less dangerous. That might mean using tracking tools that are soft, not shaming. It might mean starting with 30 seconds a day, not a full spreadsheet. It might mean reminding yourself, this is not a moral failure. It's a memory your body's still holding. You can't think your way out of avoidance. You have to soothe your way back into safety. And that starts by noticing the pattern, without punishing yourself for having it. Let's be honest, sometimes spending money just feels good. It gives you a rush, a sense of control, a break from whatever's weighing on you. You buy the thing, And for a few minutes, everything feels lighter. That's not failure. That's coping. Overspending isn't always about impulse or indulgence. A lot of the time, it's about relief. From stress, from anxiety, from emptiness. It's a way to say, I matter. I deserve something nice. I want to feel something good today. Especially if, growing up, money was always about tension or restriction, spending becomes a way to rebel or to reclaim. You didn't get to choose much back then, but now you get to pick the dinner, buy the shoes, hit add to cart. It feels empowering, until the guilt shows up later. You tell yourself you should have known better. You feel ashamed for ruining progress. You promise to be better next time. But when the anxiety comes back, so does the loop. Because you're not solving a money problem. You're trying to soothe an emotional one. And spending does soothe. Temporarily. It gives your brain dopamine, it gives your body relief, but it doesn't give you resolution. The problem isn't the purchase. It's that the purchase became your only form of comfort. When you've been taught to suppress emotions or power through discomfort, spending can feel like the only safe outlet. And most budgeting advice ignores that. It tells you to cut spending, track harder, install another app. But it doesn't ask, what was this purchase actually doing for you emotionally? Until you answer that, nothing changes. You don't stop overspending by tightening control. You stop by expanding your options. More ways to regulate. More ways to feel okay without needing to swipe. You're not weak for soothing yourself. You're human. The goal isn't to eliminate comfort. It's to find better ways to create it. Most people assume the goal is to finally feel secure, to reach a place where the bills are paid, savings are steady, and stress takes a back seat. But for some, that moment, the one where things actually feel okay, is when the anxiety starts. And they don't always know why. You finally have a buffer, and suddenly you're panicking about worst-case scenarios. You hit your savings goal and feel the urge to spend it. You land a better-paying job and start sabotaging with small, careless decisions. It doesn't make sense, logically, but trauma doesn't work through logic. It works through association. If your financial past was full of chaos, your nervous system learned to function inside instability. That became familiar, predictable, safe, in its own backwards way. So when stability arrives, it feels foreign, suspicious, like something bad is about to happen. Because in your story, the calm always came before the storm. This is how self-sabotage shows up. Not because you're irresponsible, but because your body is trying to return to what it knows. It doesn't trust ease. It doesn't trust enough. It's waiting for the other shoe to drop. So it drops it first. You spend. You pick fights. You ignore red flags. You wreck the calm. Because chaos, at least, feels familiar. This is one of the most confusing parts of financial trauma. People think they're afraid of failure, but often they're afraid of peace. Because peace feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar feels unsafe. The work here isn't just about earning more or saving better. It's about retraining your nervous system to believe that safety can feel boring. That stability doesn't mean you're off guard, that you're allowed to relax without punishment on the other side. You don't have to live in crisis to stay prepared. You don't have to fear good things just because bad things used to follow.
One of the most overlooked signs of financial trauma is this. You feel guilty for receiving. You undercharge for your work. You give more than you agreed to. You offer discounts without being asked. You overdeliver because you're afraid of seeming greedy. And it doesn't look like trauma. It looks like being nice, being generous, being humble, being reasonable. But what's actually happening is deeper. If you grew up around scarcity, not just in money, but in worth, it's likely that asking for more now feels emotionally unsafe. You don't want to be too much. You don't want to outgrow people. You don't want to trigger resentment. So instead, you stay small. You keep your rates low to be accessible. You add extras because it feels wrong not to. You accept late payments, boundary pushes, and unpaid labor, not because you don't notice it, but because confrontation feels worse than depletion, especially if, In your past, money created distance between people, between roles, between love and power. You might believe that being liked is safer than being respected, that giving more is how you keep connection, that charging fully means inviting rejection. And this runs deep. It shows up in business, in freelancing, in friendships. You give, then quietly resent. But even then, you blame yourself, because financial trauma often teaches us that wanting is dangerous, that asking means risking abandonment, that success makes you a target, so you protect yourself by staying underpaid, overextended, and emotionally exhausted. But here's the truth. Being compensated fairly is not exploitation. Saying, "This is my rate," is not aggression. Receiving without guilt is not selfishness. It's regulation. It's healing. It's a correction to a script that told you your worth should always come last. Generosity is beautiful, but if it costs you your stability, your health, or your joy, it's no longer generosity. It's survival in disguise.
Not everyone who's experienced financial trauma avoids money. Some go the opposite direction. They track every dollar, color code their budgets, monitor every transaction like it's a threat. They don't overspend, they overmanage. Because when you've lived through periods where money meant chaos, the natural response is to seek control. Tight, constant, all-consuming control. You build systems, set rules, punish yourself for breaking them. No purchases outside the plan, no spontaneity, no softness. And again, from the outside, it looks like discipline. It looks like being good with money. People even admire it. But under the spreadsheets, there's often anxiety. Not structure, tension, not clarity, obsession. Because you're not tracking for insight. You're tracking to feel safe. Every penny accounted for, sure, I'm in control. Every deviation, sure, panic. Not because the money's in danger, but because your nervous system is. This kind of hyper-control is often praised, but it's a trauma response, a way to manage uncertainty, a way to avoid helplessness, a way to feel one step ahead of disaster, even if disaster isn't coming. And the pressure it creates is unsustainable. You burn out from the rigidity. You panic when things don't go exactly as planned. You struggle to rest because rest feels like exposure. You feel guilt for enjoyment because it's not productive. You're no longer using money as a tool. You're using it as a shield. But healing means loosening the grip, not abandoning structure, but removing the fear underneath it. It means learning that unexpected doesn't mean unsafe. That flexibility doesn't mean failure. That the world won't collapse if you shift your routine. You can still track, still plan, still stay engaged. But from a place of care, not crisis. Because real safety isn't created by controlling everything. It's built by trusting that you can handle what comes, even if it's not perfect. Financial trauma is tricky. It doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always look like trauma. Sometimes it just looks like you freezing at the checkout, or checking your balance 12 times a day, or never checking it at all. Sometimes it looks like working non-stop and still feeling broke, or avoiding invoices because you feel guilty charging people, or not trusting yourself with stability because you're waiting for the rug to get pulled, and you wonder, why am I like this? Why can't I just be normal with money? Why do I feel so broken around something that's supposed to be logical? But you're not broken. You're adapted. You adapted to unpredictability, to stress, to fear, to pressure that lasted too long, and safety that never felt secure. You built habits, not because they were ideal, but because they helped you survive. They protected you, even if now they're keeping you stuck. The first step isn't fixing everything, it's noticing. Noticing that under your spending is self-soothing, that under your tracking is fear, that under your avoidance is grief. Not to shame it, not to force yourself out of it, but to witness it clearly, gently. Because when you see it for what it is, the pressure to perform disappears. You stop trying to be perfect with money. You start trying to be honest with yourself about where it hurts, and that honesty creates space. Space to change, to soften, to try new systems that aren't built on fear, to build safety not through control, but through presence. Healing doesn't happen overnight. It happens when you stop blaming yourself long enough to actually listen. You've lived with patterns that once served you. You get to choose if they still do, and if they don't, you get to let them go. Not all at once, not perfectly, but one honest moment at a time. If this video made something click for you, consider subscribing. Hit the bell so you don't miss the next one, and leave a comment, even just a thanks or your own story. I read everything.